Hey, how's it going, guys? This is your boy Hazzed, and finally the 8.2 PTR is back up, coming Tuesday for the new week. I've been waiting, like I literally been checking this thing every day, trying to get some of this nice juicy 8.2 footage out to you guys. So we're gonna be jumping into a Mythic Plus spec going on for Frosty K's in 8.2. Now this is something I've been kind of excited to talk about. It is using some of the tricks I've talked about in the last video that amplifies some of our current abilities, especially Obliteration and Frostbite. So let's go ahead and jump into this video and talk about this.
It's who we are, it's what we do, we've come so far, and now we pay the price, so don't even cry. The world is breaking down, and I cannot leave the ground.
Starting off, we're going to just discuss the talents for this Frostbite PvE build. We're going to be using for the level 56 Cold Heart just for the single target burst, since, I mean, really the spec that's what's going to be slightly lacking is going to be the single target burst in comparison to a lot of other specs like the breath spec and things like that. So I'm going to be using Cold Heart to make up for that just a little bit. As for the level 57 talents, we're going to be using Runic Attune, obviously, just because I want that runic power. I want endless runic power because I never want to run out of runes. And of course, with the 8.2 buffs for Frosty K coming around with this build, you literally will never run out of runes for your frost scythe, so it's literally just coming off like a machine gun at all times. Once in a while you're gonna have to weave in a frost strike here and there, but mainly it's just gonna come out like a machine gun. It's pretty crazy. As for the level 58 talents, most likely I'll either be using Asphyxiate or Blinding Sleet, considering what Mythic Plus I'm going to be doing on a Frosty K and what I need to interrupt and CC throughout the dungeon. As for the level 60 talents, we're going to be using Frost Scythe. Now, Frost Scythe for this build is kind of key. It's kind of the bread and butter for this kind of build. And the reason being is because of the ability called Blood of the Enemy. Now, this is the same one I was using inside of PvP to actually proc up a lot of extra damage with my Obliteration rotation. As you can see, for level 100 talent, we're using Obliteration. There's a reason for that, and Frostbite. They combine very well together, as we know. Now, we actually amplify all that by using Blood of the Enemy, which causes 25% extra critical strike chance against targets for 15 seconds, which really not a huge difference since we're using Obliteration, and we're going to be getting crits, you know, all the time from our Frostbite, literally all the time. And but this is where it kind of gets crazy. It increases your critical hit damage by 35% for 15 seconds, and that's really the thing that makes Obliteration skyrocket through the roof when it comes to DPS, since it guarantees overall crits for our abilities. And since we're going to be granting ourselves a lot more Frost Scythes because we have a lot more uptime with that runic power to rune conversion coming in 8.2, it's going to make it a lot stronger. Also, the fact that with Frost Scythe, it deals, you know, a small amount of damage, and when it crits, it deals 4 times normal damage. So that 4 times normal damage is going to be what's being amplified by 35%, causing the Frost Scythe to go absolutely nuts. As for the level 75 talents, you could be using, I mean, you'd probably be using a Wraith Walk if you want to avoid stuff on the ground, or getting out of boss mechanics is going to be really key. You can use Death Pact if you want to just have some little bit of extra survivability, but if you're pushing a key past like 15, chances are you get hit by a mechanic, you're going to die anyways. So I mean, that's really not going to help you much. So probably more Wraith Walk in that situation. As for the level 90 talents, now, I was kind of jumping back and forth between all 3 of these talents with this build. Now, I know Glacial Advance would increase the overall single target damage that it could do, and I also realized that Frostworm's Fury would be very strong with this, since the critical strike of the AoE is really what pads Frosty K's damage. But I really didn't want to be committed again to another 3-minute cooldown timer, since I'm not running breath, and I really just don't want to put it all in one basket again. And I really wanted to kind of spread it out, so I went with Gathering Storms, and that also complements my Azurite traits that I'm running called Frozen Tempest on every single one of these to increase my Remorseless Winter damage. That's also going to give us the Remorseless Winter Howling Blast proc, which is going to increase our AoE by a lot, and that's also going to push us right into our Obliteration rotation to get those crits on Frost Scythe, since it's going to be a very powerful free Howling Blast coming off while using Remorseless Winter. So it all kind of combines together well, and the reason why we're using Icy Citadel, again, it synergizes very strongly with Obliteration, since it increases the time you get a large amount of strength from your burst. Now that's going to be key because you're going to be able to hold out over 50 to 60k DPS while using this spec, AoEing up close on only 4 targets. Now this is where it gets crazy. I haven't thrown out too many numbers at this point, But with this spec, the highest I've bursted was around 200k on 4 targets. I actually think my Azerite trait cleaved a fifth because of the, the giant DPS dummy that tries to punch your face in over there behind us. Yeah, look at him over there with that smug little training dummy over there that keeps whooping on us. But anyways, so the highest I've reached is about 200k. And that'll fall down to about 50 to 60k after about 1.5 minutes. And I've honestly never fallen below 50k. And once you're able to reach that next crit, your DPS just skyrockets back up again when you have Pillar and that back up at the same time. And they're both going to line up very well together. There's not going to be any clunky offsets or things like that. Now, the other thing that Icy Citadel is going to do, since we're using Obliteration, is it's going to give us a lot of extra crits that we can consume on our killing machine. As you can see, that Frost Scythe is also considered as critical effect under this Icy Citadel. So you're going to be able to just hold on to that strike for an extremely long time. And also, since Frost Scythe only requires 1 rune, you're never going to run out of runes. You're also going to be getting a mastery amount of crits and just crits everywhere. Alright, so crits everywhere. You're just going to be able to just hold this out for an extremely long time. And also, since you're running the Gathering Storms talent, it's going to end up being your second highest damaging ability is easily going to be Remorseless Winter over that 1.5 minutes. So let's go ahead and jump into some of this rotation. I'll show you guys some of the DPS that this is capable of doing. So getting to this Frost Scythe rotation, we're going to start out by discussing some of the DPS. As of right now, I can hit about 100k majority of the time on procs, and then from there we end up at a DPS about a 1.5 minute marker, about 55 to 60k constant DPS on 4 targets. Now, if this was, let's say, the spirits or something along those lines, the DPS would be astronomical since there's like 20 to 30 spirits that come at you at once. But since it's going to be an 8.2, chances are we won't have the Bomb Som DD buff going on anymore. We'll have something new, and most likely it'll be a new season. Alright, so going about this rotation, it's fairly easy. It's just as the same design as the one we did before. You just specifically pop your Remorseless Winter up front. The reason being is we're just going to use that as a guaranteed Howling Blast proc at the beginning of the match to apply our dots to the targets, and then we're going to go directly into using Frost Scythe. Now that becomes very important just because, well, I mean obviously you need those dots. From there, we just spam the ever-living crud out of Frost Scythe up until the point that we get a Howling Blast proc, and then we use the Howling Blast proc and we go to using Frost Scythe. From there, if you're ever rune starved, which doesn't happen very often at all, you can weave in 1 Frost Strike, which pretty much has a guarantee that you are going to be granted a rune when using Frost Scythe. So you're really never going to run out of capabilities of Frost Scything the target inside Mythic Plus. And I really feel like that was the huge downside to Frost Scythe when it came to BFA, was that there wasn't enough consistency within the Frost DK to really benefit from that ability. But since we're also running abilities like Icy Citadel and Frozen Tempest, we're just going to have just a ton of actual AoE consistency on our Frost DK. So let's go ahead and start out this rotation. We're going to throw up Remorseless Winter first. We're going to run in on the we're going to throw up Remorseless Winter. We're going to hit Pillar. We're going to run in on the target and hit Blood of the Enemy. From there, we're going to use the Howling Blast proc, and then we're going to use our Frost Scythe. So let's go ahead and do this. Throw up Remorseless Winter, using that ability. We're going to go ahead and throw up our ability. We're going to go Howling Blast. We're going to go to Frost Scythe, and we're just going to keep Frost Scything the target until we get enough Howling Blast, or a proc to get our Howling Blast proc up. But you can see there we're easily preaching over 100k DPS, and we're just going to continue our Frost Scythe DPS. We could have used another Frost Scythe there. But obviously we went towards a Frost Scythe. So we're just going to keep just spamming the ever-living crud out of these Frost Scythes. Whenever we need a filler, we'll resort to using those Frost Strikes. And it's just kind of a circle. It's a circle when it comes to the cleave. It's very simple to do, very easy. And you just continually do the same thing until you actually bring up the cooldowns for your next abilities. Alright, Howling Blast, proc, Frost Scythe. Now you can see there we have up our IBF again, which is going to grant us a lot more crits towards our Frost Scythes, and of course more damage overall when it comes to DPSing. We've dropped down to 55k DPS, which is the normal rotation damage for this spec, and we're going to go ahead and grant us one last crit there as we're leaving the cooldown. Oh, we got a Howling Blast proc right in there with our Remorseless Winter, throwing out those big Frost Scythes. And you also got to remember to weave in, whenever you use Remorseless Winter, you got to weave in that Howling Blast. Very important because it's going to be a big part of your AoE damage. Now, We are approaching the 1.5 minute marker because Blood of the Enemy is on a 1.5 minute cooldown. As you can see, we're going to be able to throw that up again and deal an insane amount of AoE pressure. Now, the one thing you want to do right here with this Pillar of Frost is obviously it's going to line up perfectly well with your Blood of the Enemy. And you, again, are going to want to combine those as best as possible because it's going to deal an insane amount of AoE consistency with this spec. Now, this is a lot easier to do, obviously, when I'm not talking about it or discussing it to keep up the DPS. But overall, yeah, I'm not discouraged by this at all. This is actually insane mythic plus consistency damage capability for a Frost DK. I didn't feel like was there for the AoE consistency throughout the game. Just like Unholy, that would just really just rise above Frost in the AoE and really just take over the mythic plus scene. But as you can see, this spec is looking good for Frost. The AoE consistency is really strong. I'm actually really excited to try these out in some kind of dungeon situation because being able to hold up 50k DPS AoE is just, it's out of this world for a Frost DK. That's not something we would be able to do before, at least very easily outside of Breath. Now, as for the single target Obliteration builds, I'm going to have to do a lot more testing to figure out exactly what we're going to do for those or what I'm going to do with those. What would I do for those? Are they even viable? I'm not even 100% sure at this point. Just for the simple fact that Breath itself is going to be extremely powerful. It's like Breath is day and night comparison to Live to 8.2 in just how much damage it can do when it comes to single target. If I were to compare the new Obliteration build compared to the old Breath, I'd have to say that the new Obliteration build would compete with the old Breath. But would I say that the new Obliteration build competes with the new Breath? I gotta say, probably not when it comes to single target, but when it comes to AoE cleave and consistency, I've gotta say the Obliteration Frost Scythe spec is most likely gonna blow the Breath spec right out of the water. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. After messing around a little bit with the Obliteration spec, it does have some potential, I gotta say. Like, when it comes to raising up the low end instead of trying to compete on the high end, there may be some push room there. So I'm gonna go ahead and test out some stuff. I got a few ideas to see what we can come up with. And I hope you guys, again, enjoyed this video, and if you did, leave a like, please. It would help out tremendously, guys. And of course, until next time, this was your boy Hazzed.